Welcome to No Longer Conformed, my online preaching and teaching ministry. We're studying the book of Matthew, the first gospel. In this session, we'll be looking at Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 to 30, the accountability of Christ's return. Someone wrote, "If you think you are too small to be effective, you have never been in bed with a mosquito." Our text for this session is a parable related to Christ's return that is about missed opportunity. In Matthew chapter 25, Jesus shifts his message about his return from expectancy to faithfulness. In this parable, the master is Christ, and the servants are those who profess him. From Jesus' story, we can learn three things about God's dealings with his servants. First, God trusts his servants with resources. Verse 14, "For the kingdom of heaven is like a man traveling to a far country, who called his own servants and delivered his goods to them. And to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his own ability. And immediately he went on a journey. Then he who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them and made another 5 talents. And likewise he who had received 2 gained 2 more also. But he who had received 1 went and dug in the ground and hid his Lord's money." Don't miss something. These are the master's resources, which the servants are using. They're not theirs. They belong to the master. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 7. "For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and clothing, with these we shall be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and harmful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." Don't miss this as well. The Lord supplies what is needed to equip and enable us to do his work. Whatever we receive is to be used for his purpose and his plan. God trusts his servants with a lot. Some are trusted with more than others, and it has to do with the calling and the abilities he's blessed each with. To each according to his own ability, it says, which speaks to measure of grace. For example, Billy Graham's evangelism versus his evangelism results versus the average church pastor. Talents. A talent was a measure of weight, not a specific coin. The same measure of gold was more value than that of silver. Archaeologists and historians place the weight of a talent somewhere between 50 and 125 pounds. The word money in verse 18 is the Greek word agurion, and it literally means silver. Anyway, it was a lot of money. The passage has nothing to do with natural talents. However, principles of stewardship do apply also to management of time, talent, and treasure. The modern interpretation of talent being natural ability is incorrect. It's financial stewardship according to spiritual, biblical principles that God cares about, not worldly financial principles. God is not impressed by your financial success in the world. He's looking for faithfulness according to his word. Faithfulness is the true focus of this parable. Why is that? Believers are given different levels and kinds of responsibility by Jesus. Some are gifted to do the ministry tasks better than others. Some are gifted to produce the resources needed for ministry. And yet, faithfulness is demanded of each servant. Verse 23, his Lord said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things." And notice that every servant who is faithful will be fruitful to some degree in his labor for the Lord. Verse 16 and 17 talk about made another 5 talents, gained 2 more. But unfaithful servants will be revealed as frauds. Verse 30, cast the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. God trusts his servants with his resources, and he expects a good return on his investment. Second, God calls his servants to accountability. Look at verse 19. After a long time, the Lord of those servants came and settled accounts with them. So he who had received 5 talents came and brought 5 other talents, saying, "Lord, you delivered to me 5 talents. Look, I've gained 5 more talents besides them." His Lord said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord." He also, who had received 2 talents, came and said, "Lord, you delivered to me 2 talents. Look, I've gained 2 more talents besides them." His Lord said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord." Enter into the joy of your Lord. Notice that the man with 5 talents and the one with 2 talents received the same reward. This is the key. Reward is based on faithfulness, not on results. How well were the resources God placed in your trust used for his kingdom's work? There will be a day of review, an account at the judgment seat of Christ. Greater gifts require greater returns. Lesser gifts will gain less return, but each did the best they could with what they had. God trusts his servants with his resources, and he calls his servants to accountability. Third, God judges his servants on faithfulness. Verse 24. Then he who had received the 1 talent came and said, "Lord, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you've not sown and gathering where you've not scattered seed. And I was afraid and went and hid your talent in the ground. Look, there you have what is yours." But his Lord answered and said to him, "You wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. So you ought to have deposited my money with the bankers, and at my coming I would have received back my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." A hard man. I mean, what disrespect this servant had in his description of his master. He called him a cruel and ruthless opportunist. That lazy servant, he wasn't a genuine believer. He had no true knowledge of Jesus. Verse 26, but his Lord answered and said to him, "You wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed." By repeating the charge, he was not agreeing that it was true. He was letting the servant's own words condemn him. If he believed him to be so hard, he should have been more diligent, not slothful. He justified his laziness by accusing his master. My boss is a jerk. It may be true, but that has nothing to do with your faithfulness to your work. Thomas Edison said, opportunity is missed by most people because it's dressed in overalls and looks like work. Buckner Fanning said, no one can go back and have a new beginning, but everyone can start now and have a new ending. Finally, Jesus said, to everyone who has, more will be given. In verse 29, those who receive God's grace also inherit immeasurable blessings, in addition to eternal life in God's favor. Romans chapter 8, verse 32. He who did not spare his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? Those who disregard the riches of God's goodness by burying them in the ground and clinging instead to the insignificant and passing goods of this world will ultimately lose everything they have. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. Verse 19. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in or steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. John chapter 12, verse 25. He who loves his life will lose it, and he who hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life.